Still in a lot of pain. My
Oh,
back. Yeah,
wow.
it's still sore.
It's
I
almost
thought
3 weeks now.
I know. I
Did
went to
you?
A&E. So
Oh,
yeah, for actual medication.
mm,
So they saw me and gave me what's it, oxycodone, not oxycontin,
mm,
but very similar, which is great. Because I fell asleep
mm,
in the waiting room when they sent me back out while they waited for bloods.
mm,
Then they called me and I'd fallen asleep because opiates tend to do that to you.
mm-hmm,
Pain was still there, but then the doctor asked me, or was advising me what medication he's going to give me. Then he's asking how I felt. Did the medication work reducing the pain? And I
mm,
told him no, it didn't. But I feel incredibly woozy. And I asked them because I drove there to A&E,
mm.
um, and then I asked them like, should I be driving with this medication? That was the first time it dawned on him. I assume he thought that somebody gave me a lift because
Mm.
it was the back, but he advised me to drive around the car park for 5 minutes and then see how I felt.
That,
And
come on.
if I felt, I'm serious. Like, I'm
That
fucking
is
serious.
shit advice.
I know. And I was hoping I'd see an Irish doctor. And I did. And this is the advice of an Irish doctor once they've given you 10 milligrams
Mm.
of fucking oxycodone. So I went to the car park and I drove around for 5 minutes and I felt fine. And then I started driving and then I was overwhelmed by nausea. So I had to pull into Lidl, doing a rolling stop with the
Mm.
fucking door open because the vomit was in my mouth as I'm driving. So I had to pull into Lidl, hope that there was no one else in the fucking car park. Actually went to vomit before the car stopped, so I had to open the door, uh, tried to brake and puke at the same time, and I couldn't find the brake, so I'm fucking rolling towards the curb at the wall in Lidl, and at the same time vomiting out the side of the car. So then I managed to stop the car. That was over. I only had liquid in my stomach, which is great because if you've only liquid in your stomach when you vomit, it fucking sprays everywhere. Um, then I had to sleep for an hour and a half because I was out of my tits, and so I fell asleep in the little car park for an hour. Then went in, and being clever, went in to get some food. So I got some apples and some pastries and just I thought that would make me feel better. So I drove off, and then 15 minutes later, the feeling of nausea came over me again. And this time I think it was an Aldi. I'm not sure. Aldi or Lidl, they're all the fucking same. Only this time it's more pronounced, and the timing I can actually feel the vomit in my fucking mouth this time. So the same thing again. Into the car park, find a space, roll up, door open again. And puking again as I'm driving and trying to slow down. But this time there's some poor fucking lady walking her dog back to her car. And so all she sees is this fucking little blue mini come into the car park. And she's just minding her own business. And then the door swings open. And it's me sticking my fucking head out the car as it's still driving, retching my guts up in front of this poor woman. And she didn't know what the fuck to do. So again, I had a little sleep and then drove home out of my tits in terrible pain. So the medical system works. What can I say?
Mm.
Yeah, but I didn't know. I just assumed that the doctor's going to ask that question before they give you drugs. But I didn't ask exactly what the drugs were anyway. So I suppose it's much my own fault anyway.
Ryan, are you with us?
Hi guys.
All right.
Hey. Welcome to the Old Men Complaining About Their Failing Health show.
Yes. With you. Me and my daughter are here. I've got my 10-year-old daughter, Amelie, here.
Hello.
We were talking
Hello.
about framing shark.
Hi.
Yeah, be quiet. Don't talk. And I swear to God, I am so glad we live in an entirely different state. Whoa.
She's embarrassed. Her old man is embarrassing, to say the least. Which is what I wanted to talk about, mental health. rolling her eyes at me. I wanted to talk about mental health. Mental health doing, guys.
In the dump, really, as usual.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think when we get our age, we got a fork in the road. It either goes really well or it goes really bad. I don't know. That could be for just myself. I seem to get worse with age.
Yeah,
So
I don't. Yeah, I think it's part and parcel of existence. I'm weirded out by your 10-year-old daughter being here. That's a strange conversation for.
We're on our way to the cinema, but she has been with me through thick and thin. So I don't know how much you know about our little situation with my situation with women, but yeah. Do you want me to step out and you can just hang out in here? Are you sure? Do you feel any uncomfort by listening to any of this? My kids grew up very fast. They were homeschooled. They traveled the world. They've been to 12 countries on 3 continents. They've been through a lot. So I think that if any... Go ahead.
No, please. Finish.
I was going to say, if anybody's got mental toughness, it would be my kids. Put them through it, but it just is part and parcel to the situation. So I don't know. I should probably have an adult conversation. Do you want to go ahead and just play on my phone, and I'll go take a little walk? Okay. I've been meaning to hang out with this girl for the last 3 months. I've been in Ireland the whole time, and she's been here, and she's my bestest buddy. I mean, it's just a C like that. No, she's good. She's a good kid. My kids, I swear, they are such good kids. She went through a lot after the destruction.
Did we lose you?
Yeah, I think we've lost him for a minute.
Fuck. That's what happens when you walk around with your phone. Fuck. That was going well.
Yeah, so the kid being there threw me.
Yeah, that was a bit weird.
Yeah, I think it's just circumstance.
By the way,
yeah,
20 seconds to go, and the scoreline is 17-38.
Yeah, it's done. It's over.
Yeah. It was over half an hour ago, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get your money.
My measly fucking money.
Well, it's 24 quid, It's
okay. Yeah, I suppose. I should be more grateful.
Yeah, you need to gamble more, I think is the solution. The more you gamble, the
Easily fucking money.
Well, it's 24 quid, It's
okay. Yeah, I suppose. I should be more grateful.
Yeah, you need to gamble more, I think is the solution. The more you gamble, the higher the stake, the bigger the win.
Yep.
Yeah, but get Ryan back again. I don't think I'd be comfortable having those kind of conversations with my 10-year-old. But I don't know. It's tricky. I just think we want to shelter children from all that and pretend that they won't come to any harm.
Yeah.
But they're not. At some stage you do.
But at 10, yeah. We do live in a rapidly changing world. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not going to make that call. I would lean towards that it's bad, but it is. That we can't change that. So maybe we have to recognize that maybe the children need to grow up a little faster. Like in Victorian times, send 8-year-olds up the chimney and down the mines,
That will be next, I think. If we do get our magical right-wing government that people seem so frightened of, I'm sure they will put the children to work for their own well-being, of course. But yeah, we may well need to for children to a bit quicker. But there's a sadness around that, isn't there? You shouldn't fucking have to. Really. but you do. Yeah, sorry, it just threw me for a loop. I wasn't expecting the.
Yeah, that was a bit weird.
Yeah, because it's a tough conversation to begin with, mental health, because it fucking encompasses so much. So really, I think the question for Ryan was the comparison between Ireland and the States, and safely say that mental health services aren't great in Ireland, but I'm not sure what a great mental health service looks like, and what exactly is meant by mental health, because there is just the reality of life where it can be shit, and it can be shit upon shit upon shit upon more shit, and it can be shit upon shit upon shit upon more shit. So yeah, we need to get Ryan back. So yeah, hopefully he's just out of range or something, and there's not another volcano that's fucking erupted in Hawaii.
It was weird. My mobile data turned off, like the actual setting turned off. Weird. I'm back though.
Okay, good, excellent. Okay, yeah, we were just saying, like, I was just a bit weirded out with the
talking. Sorry,
I was saying, just while you were gone, I was just saying I was a bit caught off guard because I hadn't expected your daughter to be with you in the car, and like, you seem very open with your daughter around conversations like that where I wouldn't be, so it just caught me off guard a little bit. But then beyond that, talking about this, you mentioned mental health in general, and the state, I think, of mental health services in the state in general, and the state, I think, of mental health services in the States and in Ireland. But then I'm not sure what a good mental health service actually looks like, or if you have a vision for that. Generally, I've been to, I think, a psychologist maybe once or twice, actually. Once in school when they couldn't do anything with me, and then a second time when I was a teenager, when I became very depressed and was riddled with anxiety. Beyond that, I wouldn't generally approach a psychologist or mental health services unless it's desperate, and I think that might be the general case for a lot of Irish men and women. What services, be it a counsellor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, there seems maybe there's some shame around it in Ireland. But beyond that, I'm not sure what good it actually does, or what the outcome is. Now, granted, if you're dealing with somebody who's schizophrenic or something that's a danger to other people, well then yes. But it seems when people say mental health, I suppose I don't really know what they mean in general. Like, so is it a concern around everything, or is it a concern around mental illnesses like schizophrenia, or what people would consider serious mental illnesses, or is it a case of just the general horseshit that comes along with human existence?
So I just found, maybe this will help me explain what I'm talking about, and I refer to guns and
horseshit that comes along with human existence.
So I just found, maybe this will help me explain what I'm talking about. And I refer to guns and violence and murders, different countries, maybe not just Ireland, but just comparatively to the US. And so I'll talk about that in just a minute. But what I looked up was mental health, Ireland versus the USA. And what it says is, this is somewhat consistent with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD report, which reported that Ireland was found to have 12.1% depression rate, while it found that the US was at 8%. And this is at ScienceDirect.com. It's a report from that OECD. So it seems like there's a higher depression rate in Ireland than there is in the US. A lot of mental health issues myself, depression, anxiety from relationship status, and a lot of immigration issues, just anxiety from not being able to work because I wasn't properly immigrated and I couldn't legally work. So I went through a pretty bad stage where I could have used health services, like mental health services, but I didn't get any. But I know that it's readily available. The HSE seems to really provide well for that service from friends of mine that would attend a therapist session. And they could get it pretty readily. Whereas in the States, for me, it's very hard for me to get on the list and get to a therapist, to actually get one assigned to me. So while I was in Hawaii, I was on a state health insurance program, and very few people take that. But for me to find a therapist, it took 7 months of a waiting list for me to get through the list and program. And very few people take that. But for me to find a therapist, it took 7 months of a waiting list for me to get through the list. And this was after divorce and after other problems that I really needed some support, and I was unable to get it. So moving and stuff since has been a struggle to find mental health, because then I'm at the bottom of the list again, and it takes more months and more months and more months to get, the services that I need. But what I was looking at was just because it was pointed out to me so many times, the murder rates in the United States, and especially gun murder rates, are so very high. And in other places where there's guns and crime and things like that, but guns specifically, like you'll look at Switzerland and you'll look at Israel, who both are very armed for private citizens. They allow gun ownership very readily for private citizens, like the USA does. Switzerland's number 2 for guns. Israel's number 3 for guns. And in Switzerland, every home, because of their militia, they don't have a standing army, they have a militia. And because of that, every single home has a fully automatic SIG 550 issued to their home. Whereas in the States, we don't get a fully automatic gun. I can't go to the store and buy a fully automatic gun here. It just doesn't exist for us. Unless you're, in the military and you've got all these credentials and you go and apply for a permit, and it, takes a lot of vetting, and, you don't get a fully automatic weapon in the United States. But in Switzerland, they have the lowest crime rates in the world. In the developed world, they have the lowest crime rates out of like 181 nations, yet they're well armed, very well armed for private citizens. And if you go to these auctions, you can buy military equipment, you can buy anti-aircraft, and the government pays for the ammo, and everybody goes shooting, and it's just a big gun culture in Switzerland. Yet they don't have school shootings. I don't think they've had a school shooting since like 1997 or something like that. Whereas in the United States, we have a lot of school shootings. And so when people point out to me, well, if you have more guns in your country, you're going to end up like the United States, and you're going to have a lot of school shootings and a lot of, random death. And I say to them, well, what about Switzerland? And so that's my point, is I think it's not a gun issue. I don't think more guns equal more school shootings. I think more mental health equals less tragedy. And so I think people get on edge from just how fast-paced our world is today. And that's one thing I noticed about Ireland, is that it's not so fast-paced. People have time for each other, and people are less stressed. There's not always a mission every moment and to become something in the world. People are more. I love that about Ireland. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, but I love that it's so genuinely friendly, and people love each other, even if they're taking the piss out of each other. Oh, maybe she's always comforting me. My daughter is holding my hand. We're sitting together again. But what it reminds me of is, before I left again for Ireland in October, my pastor, my minister here, said to me, well, why do you like Ireland so much? There's so much more opportunity in the United States. Your kids are here, your family's here, your friends are here. Why do you keep going to that country where there's less opportunity and less familiarity of people and places? Why go there? And the thing that drives me, besides the fact that I love a woman there with, all of my being, and I have a kid with her there, and I finally got to meet my familiarity of people and places. Why go there? And the thing that drives me, besides the fact that I love a woman there with, all of my being, and I have a kid with her there, and I finally got to meet my daughter after 2 years. But beyond the fact, and I went for years before I met her to Ireland, and I've kept going since. I've probably been 15 times now. And I've spent a lot of time there in the last 5 years. And I go there, I say, what it breaks down to for me is tea time. People take tea breaks, and it's coffee or tea, and they serve biscuits, and they serve each other. It's hospitality, it's kindness, and it's genuine friendship, and someone comes to your door, most people will invite them in for tea. And even if they don't drink tea, it's just a common thing to have for when visitors come. You sit them down, you make tea for them, and you serve them. And I don't know, it's a humbleness, it's a innocence that Ireland, I love it there so much. I hate your system, I hate your government, I really do hate the
Us
system
too.
there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it makes me want to rage vomit. I hate it so bad. But I love the people, and I love the culture, and I love the history. I love it. I love the people. I love the innocence of that place. So I just think there's a mental health crisis all over the world, but I think it is obvious here. I think that's a big thing. I think if Ireland was well armed, I think they'd have twice as many shootings than we have in the United States, because it seems like the mental health in Ireland is awful. Like, it just seems to me like it's struggling. And from that report that I read, where the United States is said to have an 8% depression rate, whereas Ireland has a 12% depression rate. I mean, you guys struggle financially. You guys have more poverty. You guys have more obstacles to get work, and the pay rate sucks. And you guys have more obstacles to get work, and the pay rate sucks. And then when you guys do get paid, they penalize you. Your taxes are insane. So there's like demotivation there to actually get a job, to actually be productive and contribute. So and nobody wants to be on the dole. Like, that's a dishonor. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be looked upon as, I'm taken from other people who are working. But that's better than working, because you get more money out of it. Like, in general, you walk away with more in your pocket by sitting on your ass at home than if you went to work and worked a standard job, because after you take your paycheck, they take 30% or 40%. And everything's taxed there. Your NCT is far more. Everything seems to cost more in Ireland in general. Your petrol is twice as much as ours is. Everything seems taxed to the guilt, to the absolute. I've never seen a more depressing system. Like, I've been all over the world, and I've never seen a more depressing system than Ireland. And then, you see a lot of violence here with refugees and migrants, and a lot of people are talking about closing our borders, and there's riots about it, or there's at least a lot of hostility about it. That's going on right now in Ireland. Well, I was there in December. You saw all that in Dublin, where they burned Dublin down. That's a real thing in Ireland now, because everybody's competing for work. You got a lot of Ukrainians coming in now. You got a lot of refugees from Somalia and other places, and Saudi Arabians, and just whatever. Now, like, people like me, Americans, who actually bring something to contribute. I'm not looking to be on the dole, but I think that's why we're more welcome, is because we come with our own wealth. We come with our own money. We don't typically go sign up for services or government assistance. So I think Americans aren't as frowned upon as some of these other immigrants. But and you've got a group of Ukrainians that come in and immediately walk into a housing and have the dole issued to them immediately without any fuss. And I can see why Irish are pissed off and disgruntled about it. I can see why Dublin burned that night. Like, I don't agree with it. I think it's awful what happened, but I can see why, I don't know. That's my thoughts on mental health. I see the struggle in both sides of it now. I didn't see it in Ireland. Ireland seemed so happy to me the first 5 or 10 times I went there. And then this last time I saw the pain that really came out, the rage, the insult, that people feel. I don't know. That's just
well, no, you're right. Like, I'll probably start at the end there. Like, it's very rare for Irish people to get that upset. It's a real rarity in the Republic of Ireland to see. It's very rare for Irish people to get that upset. It's a real rarity in the Republic of Ireland to see a riot. Probably prior to that, you're more likely to see a riot at a football match or something silly like that. But when children are attacked and when women are attacked and by a foreigner at this time, that can be the only outcome, and I think righteous outcome. The question around that was, well, who actually caused the trouble? And it was probably a small amount of people. But what it represents, there is a fucking rage in Ireland, because all those things you said you longed for in Ireland, that kind of community, that friendliness, that openness, that hospitality, that's what that stake is, that vanishing of all fucking cultures and all people of the world living together. And as much as it functions, when there's that many people from different cultures competing with each other, well, then there can only be that feeling of isolation. And I think we're currently experiencing that in Ireland now, because historically we haven't had to deal with that. And anytime we have dealt with that, it's usually it's been an invasion. At least as we're taught in history, and we're told that invasions involve, people with weapons appearing on your beaches and your shoreline, and then coming in and killing people and just taking over magically like that. But it doesn't happen like that. That 12% of Irish people are depressed is a mystery to me. I would have put it up into like the 90% mark. Depressed is a mystery to me. I would have put it up into like the 90% mark. And again, I suppose it depends how we're classifying depression. Is it clinical depression, or is it people just presenting with general unhappiness? I don't know. I don't know anybody who's truly fucking happy. I don't think it can exist.
I had a problem with that statistic as well, because it's a soft science, right? Psychology. Like, what exactly are we talking about here? It's hard to quantify, really. It's kind of like asking, what's an alcoholic? Give it a definition of what an alcoholic is. I think there are probably as many definitions as there are people that you ask. I've yet to hear a repeat of the one definition, unless it's coming from, Alcoholics Anonymous or something. There's a tendency to be kind of down on yourself and insular, and it's a pattern that slowly grows and takes over your life, where you don't reach for the right choices for yourself. And I think a lot of that is covered up by people's need to just get on with it, get out the door in the morning, earn your bread, get home, and then what do you do to cope? You put on Netflix, or if it's Friday night, you go out to the pub. If you're even going out anymore. Like, I think it's a terrible sign of a country where we are kind of historically known around the world even, as people who go out and they socialize and they have a few drinks and, they have the crack. But we're not doing that anymore.
No. We had the indignity of being imprisoned in our houses for essentially the best part of 2 fucking years, if not longer.
Yeah.
So the psychological effect that has on people.
Of course.
Sorry, go on.
But if something, if something is really actually rooted inside you, you can't rub that out in 2 years. We were already primed to become more insular and isolated, I think.
Yeah, well, true, because we're between that, social media, so everything, like we've discussed this 1,000 times, we have all these
isolated, I think.
Yeah, well, true, because between that, social media, so everything, like we've discussed this 1,000 times. We have all these gadgets and devices, and governments that act as the community. So if we can go back to a time before we had professionals, professional mental health nurses and psychiatrists and psychologists, we would have dealt with that mostly on a personal level. If it's mid-range, let's call it mid-range depression. Like what Ryan said, like, you've gone through a divorce, you've lost a loved one, not to death, but your relationship has ended. And so I think Ryan said at that stage he would have liked mental health support. And even if we take it close to you, so I could imagine for Ryan being in Ireland, you're removed from that. And I think he did mention that someone asked you the question, well, why would you fucking go to Ireland when you do have all this here, where you are rooted in the States? And I think that's probably the core of the depression. It's not that where you are, it's the kind of society you want to live in. And so everybody wants that safety and comfort, and generosity, real fucking generosity of other people. And for me, what I see as an outsider, I've never been to the States. I'm married to a woman from the States, and I know a fair chunk of people from the States, but just life there seems much more brutal and cutthroat than it is here. And I can't believe I'm going to defend high taxation. But as fucked up as Ireland is, we won't have money. They're essentially fucked. Like, it's like you're thrown to the wolves. One of my in-laws over there just had eye surgery, and it's like $114,000, and her insurance won't cover it. Like, that's just
absolutely. Oh, you're absolutely right. We are thrown to the wolves. So
yeah.
true.
Yeah. So
I left home very early. I was paying rent by age 15. I worked at an irrigation company digging ditches, toiling in the ditches, manual labor, and paying rent. I sold marijuana on the side to make ends meet, and lived with some cousins, but we all had our own, we were all teenagers, and we all had our own little place. And, and that was just okay. Like, that wasn't really obscene. And I go to Ireland and I tell people, I'm like, you're coddling your children. Like, they're going to be at home until they're 30. Like, what like, that wasn't really obscene. And I go to Ireland and I tell people, I'm like, you're coddling your children. Like, they're going to be at home until they're 30. Like, what the fuck? Get them out there working. What happened to child labor here? Isn't there any child labor, for fuck's sake? And everybody gasps and thinks that I'm insane. And I'm like, but that's how it is, right? Like apprentices, even back in, the 12th century, I mean, they started at 12 and they started working for nothing with a master, and they gained the master's skills slowly over time. But, by the time they were ready to leave their home, they were ready for a family. They could support 5 kids and a wife at age, 20 years old, and have no problem, and now, and I think this is one of the problems that I find in Ireland that I don't agree with, is now, everybody's so worried that they might push their kids over the edge, or that they might, not make them feel comfort, somehow, and that's important. Happy now. And I think this is one of the problems that I find in Ireland that I don't agree with, is now, everybody's so worried that they might push their kids over the edge, or that they might, not make them feel comfort, somehow, and that's important. Happiness is the most important thing. So if they're not happy, then you have to go out of your way to pamper them and coddle them so they are happy. And in my opinion, it disables people. So in some respects, I'm glad the USA forced me, and it wasn't necessarily forced. I made a choice. I really enjoyed being Peter Pan. I enjoyed being, with the Lost Boys and doing my own thing at that age. I felt very confident in myself. I felt accomplished, and I felt like I was moving forward faster, and that's what I wanted. But I'm glad that the opportunities were there for me to do that. I'm glad child labor existed, And the minimum wage at that time was $4.25 an hour. But because I was an agricultural worker, I made $3.50 an hour. But I was able to do that. Like, at least I had that opportunity. And so I took it in and, accepted it as a gift from God. I loved it. And I was able to, leave a semi-abusive situation. My father was an alcoholic, and yeah, it was good for me. So maybe not good for everybody, but I was able to leave a difficult situation. And without the ability to do that, I would have been forced to sit with a uncomfortable, a brutal, violent, sometimes, not all the time, but I'm not trying to make it out like I was just the most sorry victim that there was, but I wasn't going to be anybody's fucking victim. Like, that was my attitude towards it. Like, I don't need to be your fucking victim. I'm not going to be your fucking victim, so I'm on my own. See ya. Peace.
So I think what you're describing, I have this image anyway. Everybody's been sold this image of the American dream. You can go to this amazing land with nothing, and you can be a millionaire and live at the top of the world, and that's wonderful and fantastic. If that opportunity exists to do that, why would you not want to go and live there? But I think over time people become disillusioned, and it's like, well, this dream that you've been sold isn't actually real for vast amounts of people. And what I see is people, working 2 and 3 jobs just to fucking get by, which is a brutal form of existence. And then Irish people do work, I suppose. We don't really have that Protestant work ethic where it's like, work till you fucking die, like work your way into, would have that historical notion as well. It's like, well, fuck you. Like, why should I work like a fucking slave? For what? For what exactly?
Yeah.
To just to struggle to get by. We don't have that opportunity with our kids to work and to make their own way up. We import people to do that now. And so that's where we are now. We're now at a stage where, we see people openly talking about, well, what do we do with all the useless fucking eaters, What do we do with these people who we have no further use for? And that's been openly discussed, what do we do? And the best thing we have at the moment is to just keep people busy with computer games and hope that everything will work out well. But it's not going to fucking happen, I don't think at all. And back to the mental health issue, I don't know how anybody can be mentally healthy in this type of society or existence. But it's not going to fucking happen, I don't think at all. And back to the mental health issue, I don't know how anybody can be mentally healthy in this type of society or existence. So what is it exactly you mean by mental health? Is it just the grind, just the fucking having to deal with, loss and breakup of relationships? And for you, I can't imagine it's particularly easy because you, if I'm right, you have family in the States, you have children in the States, and you have children in Ireland. So you have to be horribly drawn between the two, and there doesn't seem any obvious, at least to me, I don't know your situation well, but there doesn't seem an easy fix for this. It's like a monumental problem.
Oh yeah. I mean, I am so torn, that I accept, I think, a less be treated on both sides, just to try to make it work. Like, I find myself groveling for acceptance and working extra hard to fix problems that sometimes are unfixable. And I push myself to, make fixes. So it drives people crazy, and they think I'm mentally ill because I'm obsessed to fix things. And I have, constraints on both sides, whether it's immigration on this side or finances to support, 9 children that I consider my children, 5 of which have my DNA, but 9 children that I love and bought Christmas for this last year. I bought everybody a good gift and, was there as much as I could be for both sides. I was in the United States for part of December, and I was in Ireland for the rest of December. and tried to balance that out. So my situation is unique, but like before going to Ireland, like in the U.S., like before going to Ireland, like in the U.S., I can describe for many people that you don't reach out to anybody. You're very introverted. My ex-wife and I didn't speak to our families for 13 years, like at all. Like we didn't ring them. We didn't have them visit. We blocked them on social media. We did it ourselves. We just did it. Like whatever it took to be healthy or productive or pay our bills. Like there was nobody to save us, and there's nobody to bitch to. There was nobody to complain to, nobody to get any empathy from. You know, we did it on our own 100% for 13 years. And for most of the 18 years we were married, you know, we moved away from home. We moved away from where our family was and went 1,000 miles from our home state. And we just wanted to do it by ourselves. There's a certain pride in the United States. Away from where our family was and went 1,000 miles from our home state. And we just wanted to do it by ourselves. There's a certain pride in the United States that we are independent, you know, self-driven and accomplished. And that's the satisfaction of toiling for 18 hours a day. So that was my life. I worked my regular 40-hour week, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. I worked the night shift Monday through Friday. And then Friday after getting off at 5 a.m., I'd start a job, the same job that was just a weekend on-call shift. But that's when all the calls came in. I was a robotics engineer. I was doing tech support. So at 9 p.m. that night on Friday, after getting off at 5 a.m., I'd start Friday night at 9 p.m. and I'd work till Monday morning at 5 a.m., 56 hours. So I'd work my 40, and then I'd work 56, and then I'd get back on Monday morning at 5 a.m. and start my next, Monday night, at 9 p.m., morning at 5 a.m. and start my next, Monday night, at 9 p.m. and then I'd finish another 40-hour week. So I was working 96 hours a week. I had 2 businesses and I had a retail store that I was managing at the time. So I slept maybe 2 hours a night, barely sleeping. I had 4 kids and got almost killed at work, you know, like driving home from a job. I was going from Seattle, Washington to Northern California, and a guy hit me head on trying to kill himself, combat soldier who had PTSD and had been trying to kill himself. And he did that and killed himself on my car, got decapitated in the process. And I was in the hospital in a wheelchair for 7 months. I'm all rebuilt with titanium. You know, so beyond just the regular mental health issues that Americans have, that was my struggle. And so I don't think a lot of Americans have reliable friends and family that can comfort them in times of need. And like a friend of mine, my friend Jack, there, one of my best friends in the world, he says, Ryan, Americans are made to grow up at age 12. Like, you know, like you're an adult, basically. Your mentality is that of an adult when you're age 12. And I was like, absolutely. And we were talking about minding kids. And I was like, you know, when I was a 12-year-old, you know, before I left home at 12, but I didn't actually start on my own until I was 15, but I went and lived with family at age 12. But I had been babysitting my siblings. I had 3 siblings younger than me, and I was babysitting them and taking care of their needs, you know, starting at age 8, but full time in the summers at age 12. And I watched them for 8 to 10 hours a day and cooked their meals and, you know, took care of any emergencies. And, you know, there wasn't like quick contact to reach my parents. Like I couldn't just call a cell phone if the house caught on fire or we got robbed or, you know, whatever. Like 3 until I guess 9 was my youngest sibling. And so I was minding kids that were babies, toddlers, all the way up to like, you know, 9 or 10 years old. And not even know, because when I was 12, I guess she must have been 8. So 8 years old, 3 through 8 is what my siblings were when I was minding them at age 12. And the horror people, you know, look at me when I say, well, you know, if you need to go out, if you're, you know, needing to go shopping for food, like, you know, leave your 15-year-old to watch your kids, you know, like if you've got younger kids. And the looks I get, they're like, Tusla will be on us. We'll get our kids removed from us if we do that. There's no fucking way we can do that. So it's a different culture. We do grow up fast. We're meant to be adults by the time before we're even teenagers. We're meant to think like an adult and be responsible. And that's not the same in Ireland. I know just not leave until they're 45 years old. And that doesn't seem shocking to people over there. That seems like pretty common thing. To me, that blows my mind. I don't know. I guess my brother lives with my mother and he's 40, so I guess I can't complain too much. But it just doesn't seem very common over here to live with your parents to that age.
There's a cultural difference. Sorry, Morgan, I stepped over you.
No, you're okay. Carry on.
So there's a cultural difference here. Granted, you have the dysfunction that we're all very aware of, but in a lot of European societies, you stay with your parents. The family lives in the family home until you get married. Then you move out with your partner. It's just that part is what got interrupted. And when it's interrupted, it just becomes toxic. You know, you can't live forever. That part is what got interrupted. And when it's interrupted, it just becomes toxic. You know, you can't live forever in your parents' home, you know? So that's why it looks weird to you. I'd like to bring up something a little more just tangible than social issues, tax. Not to say that those aren't tangible, but just right down to biology, right? The sun. Very important. We're not more than, was it like 500 miles from the North Pole than Norway, for instance, or Alaska. But in these countries, the government has to literally take over the sale of alcohol. The government has to literally take over the sale of alcohol. You can only buy alcohol through the government because you can only buy so much, because you'll drink yourself to death, because nights are so long and it's just so dark even when it is light out during most of the year, that your mental health is already on a knife edge. I don't think you can change anything about a society to make that okay. I think the reason why human beings live in such ridiculously stupid places such as Norway, Alaska, Ireland, Siberia is because we're pushed there. We have to. It's the only way that we can survive, because, you know, the more violent, where you have, what is it, a month of just complete darkness. It's pretty fucking depressing, man. I only left this country once. I'll admit that, right? It was 2 years ago. Went to Spain, Alicante, to celebrate my sister's 30th, and it was fucking glorious. The weather could have been better. There was a thunderstorm pretty much for most of it, most of the week. But even that marginal more sunlight was game changing, you know? I felt just natural. I just went about my business, doing things. And sure, I was on holiday, but, you know, I've been on holiday in Donegal, for instance, and that's a completely different experience. In terms of my mental disposition, you know? So, you know, we can talk about social issues and government issues, but really if we're not looking at the facts on the ground of biology, like for instance, people who live inland, they're a bit dull, you know? They're not as sophisticated. And that's because they're not eating enough fish and they're not getting enough fresh air. You know, it's just stagnant and they're missing those essential oils.
Right. That's true. Those are
I,
important.
I think with the mollycoddling of children. So Irish mothers have always been known to mollycoddle their children. But it is a recent in phenomena of being overprotective and not allowing children to grow up until their 20s and 30s. And in Europe, Ireland does have the highest percentage of people who live with their parents until their late 30s and early 40s. And a lot of that is because of economics. They can't fucking afford it. Like, there is no opportunity for people. There just isn't. There isn't the physical buildings. There isn't the actual employment out there for people to afford the luxury of putting themselves into debt for 20 or 30 years. And so people just can't do that. They have no fucking real option. And what people will do, faced with those odds, is leave. Right? And so people just can't do that. They have no fucking real option. And what people will do, faced with those odds, is leave. Like, just leave for the opportunity to put themselves into fucking debt so they can have somewhere to call their own.
That's what I get a lot of, is that people are leaving Ireland to come to the USA, but there isn't a lot of fucking people coming from the USA to move to Ireland.
No, but you guys can't. Like, so I told you my wife is American. She's naturalized here now in Ireland, but her mother-in-law isn't, and her mother-in-law gets nothing. The only reason she can stay here is because, like you said, she can support herself. And beyond that, it's like, if she couldn't, it would be like, fuck off, go home.
Yeah.
And she's a wonderful woman, and she's a very skilled woman as well. But for her to stay here, she has to, give proof of an income that she can support herself, that she can take care of her own medical bills. She gets absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And she gives us great support because she is our nanny, an actual nanny. So she helps out with the rearing of the children. And that's something as simple as that, having your grandparents to help out, your mother-in-law to help out with your children. That's the natural thing to do, but because of the type of society we live in, that's farmed out. So we farm the children out to schools and creches and what have you, and then we wonder why we're unhappy. Because we want to be with our children, but we can't. You're working fucking 56 hours a week, 2 businesses, so where's the actual time?
56, 96 for me, but yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ, like, that's even more ridiculous. So where's the time? Like, you're sleeping 2 hours a day, so you don't actually have time. You don't get to the age where they should be making moves for themselves. They essentially can't, because the opportunity isn't there, and the support of traditional family isn't there to help out. It wasn't so long ago in Ireland where, if your family was lucky enough to have a bit of land, that members of your community would come together and help to build a home for you. You see all the terrible buildings throughout Ireland, like just fucking essentially rectangles made out of breeze block, but that's just because people with those type of skills would come together and help out their neighbours. I believe that still exists to an extent in rural Ireland, but in the cities, like, that type of community is gone, and I don't know if we can get it back, but I think the way things are in Ireland, it at least represents an opportunity to get some of that back again, because I think people are finally realising that we can't live in isolation. Of course, people become more insular, but there may be a benefit from that. It will actually bring Irish people back together once they find their voice and get over the fear of saying how they actually feel about things. I'm sure if you've been to Ireland enough time, you know it's very difficult for Irish people to level with you or tell you how they're actually feeling, especially around mental health of all things, because it's like, Jesus Christ, it's almost rude to bring up the issue of mental health to most Irish people. It's terribly uncomfortable, because when you do acknowledge it, well, then you have to talk about it and admit what the actual problems are of your depression or your unhappiness, and then eventually you have to come around to it as well. What part do you fucking play in it as well? And that's the rough one. But the danger in that is if you accept too much responsibility on your own behalf, well, then you just cripple yourself further. But for me, a lot of it gets freed up by just being truthful with the rough one. But the danger in that is if you accept too much responsibility on your own behalf, well, then you just cripple yourself further. But for me, a lot of it gets freed up by just being truthful with the other people. As simple as it sounds, it's fucking terribly difficult.
Well, I tell you, I am very open. Like you can see, I'm just an open book. My kids know, my anybody who knows me, and I don't know a lot of people. I try not to know people, but I spill the beans. I don't have any shame in who I am. I'm very confident and proud of the person I am, but I'm also happy enough to admit my faults, my weaknesses, and people know anything about me if I'm struggling. And, I don't need their pity. I don't need their help. I don't want it. Fuck off. But, yeah, hey, I'm having a rough fucking day. I'm having a rough life. I'm having a rough relationship. It is what it is. Now let's drink a Guinness, move on. And people are horrified to think lesser of them in any way. It seems like there's so much pride in just not having problems. And everybody's got problems, but there's so much pride to be able to cover it up and have a happy face anyway. And nobody wants to reveal their weaknesses. And for me, like I cry in front of people. I just do. I don't know. That's weird in Ireland. I sometimes just cry. And I'm not a weak person. I give no fucks. Like I always take care of my own shit. I'm always, prepared to, be alone or take care of who I am without anybody else's assistance. Like I don't need nobody to feel sorry for me. But if I'm having a rough moment, a couple tears might fall out of my eyeballs, and then people think that's crazy in Ireland. You got to keep a facade up, a toughness about you, and any kind of weakness like that is offensive to people. It seems like it might be that way here in the United States too. Like I say, it might be that way here in the United States too. Like I say, I don't really find myself surrounding myself with people, but I'd say it's a lot more easy to be emotional here than it is in Ireland. And a lot of people think of it as a weakness. I think of it as a strength. I think honesty, whether it's through emotion or whether it's through, declaration or moment of conversation, like honesty for me is so much more admirable and so much more valuable than being dishonest. And in Ireland, for me, it's the reverse. People would tell white lies to cover up any kind of weakness or pain rather than be honest about it. And I think that's dishonorable. I think that's a weakness in itself, to have to lie about everything, even if it's a little white lie just to cover up a pain or a weakness. Like for me, I think it's disgraceful. But that's not the cultural differences. I think in Ireland is that my honesty is just I wear it on my sleeve and I'm proud of it. My honesty is one of my virtues, and in Ireland it's a weakness. Honesty is a weakness there, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think with going to the crying thing, like, so you're right. If an Irish person sees a man crying, it's you're at a loss. It's like, what the fuck happened? Like, and the first question is like, is this guy crazy? Is he going to blow something up, or take a gun out and start shooting people? Because it's a rare event to see a man crying due to emotions. It's normally you expect a man to cry if he has suffered a terrible loss, and beyond that, it's a case of like, come on, will you stop fucking crying? Like, dry your eyes, you'd be grand. It's not that bad. And Irish people have it, but you don't in public, because it is seen as a weakness. It is seen as a weakness. It doesn't mean it is, but for me, it makes me terribly uncomfortable when a man starts crying, and I know it's involuntary. The only example I have would be Jordan Peterson. When I see Jordan Peterson cry, it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, man, come on.
Yeah.
pull your shit together. Like, you know, that soon passes, because like you understand, like there's a lot that goes on with people, and you know you're supposed to cry. You like, you know it's functional. But generally, for an Irish person, you don't do it in public. I don't think. Going over American culture, again, it's not seen as a manly thing. It's seen as a feminine thing, and I'm not calling you feminine. But I think just generally when a man cries, and there is that messaging that men should cry and men should share their emotions more. The problem I have with that is seen as a feminine thing, and I'm not calling you feminine. But I think just generally when a man cries, and there is that messaging that men should cry and men should share their emotions more. The problem I have with that is that I don't think the emotions really help. I think you're onto something with the truth, but that brings its own fucking problems, because then you have to deal with other people who aren't willing to deal with you on the same level. They're not going to be honest with you. And that's just a fucking disaster. If you're, you know, pouring your heart out and being completely vulnerable and honest with someone, and then the other person isn't, well, then you're at an immediate disadvantage, because you've exposed yourself, you've shown your soft white underbelly. And generally, from my experience, people tend to view that as a weakness, and will fucking use it against you. But again, that just could be an Irish thing, But yeah, most Irish men, they wouldn't tell you if their mother died. You know, everybody has their shit, and just fucking keep it to yourself. I'm not saying that to you directly. That's just the general. I don't think it should be like that, but that's the general feeling in Ireland. And I remember once in work saying it to a guy that I was having issues at home, and he essentially said, yeah, well, whatever, like, shut up, we're in work. It's like, all right, fair enough. That's the way it is generally, I think, for most men in Ireland.
Yeah, that's another aspect to it, where you actually frighten people because you're reminding them of their own shit. You know, we all humans have it in all societies to some degree. Like, try bringing up death with anyone, you know, not just like, oh, such and such died. Well, you know, that's factual stuff, but get into a philosophical conversation with someone about death, you'll freak them the fuck out.
Oh yeah, you get a name in the town. The witch doctor. I was a fucking witch doctor approached me the other day and started talking about death, like he's trying to steal my soul. Yeah, they're very uncomfortable topics, but they're the important ones.
Talking about religion in Ireland, while it's a very religious, you know, country, like far more religious than the United States is, talking about it is, you know, a cultural taboo. Like you don't want to talk about religion, especially in any depth. Like you might talk about so and so is christened, or you know, the events in the religion, or the things, you know, the gatherings in religion, but you never want to get philosophical about it. And I wrote a book called Echoes of Power, and it talks about the Catholic corruption of the Bible, you know, and how it was edited in the Council of Nicaea, and then, you know, for so many years, 1600 years, there was 80 books in the Bible, and then they were edited out, and now there's 66 books in the Bible, and 80 books in the Bible, and then they were edited out, and now there's 66 books in the Bible, and you know, it's just facts. You know, these are just facts. Like, it's not like this is my belief. You know, I don't believe in, or I do believe. It's not like that. It's like just talking about the facts is uncomfortable in Ireland, and you know, I've just noticed, like, any kind of depth, it's so superficial. And that's part of the innocence, though. That's part of the thing I like, but it's also part of the thing that I disconnect with too, because I'm so, I go deeper than most Americans. Like, I wouldn't say a lot of Americans go to the depths of things that I would go into. And so I don't, like, I always say this in Ireland, and a lot of people don't get this. And I would say, when it comes to knowledge, or when it comes to who I am, I don't believe anything. I don't believe anything at all. You know, I know things. And if I don't know things, and I want to know things, so I look it up and I research it immediately. Like, someone told me once, I don't know things and I want to know things, so I look it up and I research it immediately. Like, someone told me once, you know, so many deaths come from grapes, you know, from whether kids or adults, but at certain ages, you know, if you feed a kid a grape, he's at great risk to die from it. So we cut them up into little squares, and I'm like, this has got to be this fucking mollycoddling thing. Like, are you serious? You cut up grapes for your kids? So I looked it up, you know, And sure enough, there's a couple of deaths from grapes, but like people are terrified of grapes in Ireland. Like, are you fucking kidding? Cut up your grapes? But like, I don't believe anything. Someone tells me something crazy like that, and I look it up, and that offends people because, you know, a lot of people are just used to being told like, oh yeah, you know, Molly knows what's going on. You know, I better listen to Molly. You know, she's old enough now. She's seen a few things. And yeah, I don't care if she's 80 and, you know, well educated, or if she's 20 years old and thinks she knows everything. If someone tells me something and I don't understand it, I don't believe it. You know, I look it up, and that drives my friends in Ireland.
Get a philosophical discussion with someone in Ireland around religion or a theological discussion. It's not going to happen because simply people don't have the knowledge. You know, people are always get their knickers in a twist about the teaching of religion in Irish schools. It's pretty simple. There's no real education on religion. It's essentially, you know, here's the curriculum. Let's read the Bible and the New Testament. Let's not really talk about anything in it. Let's just accept it verbatim. Let's not discuss anything around it or what it could possibly mean or the ethics of it. That just doesn't happen. It's okay, let's read this passage. Let's answer some questions, some standardized questions on it. And then let's do a test at the end of 3 years. And that's it. So most Irish people won't have any in-depth knowledge about religion at all. So all they could essentially talk to you about is, you know, Jesus existed, he died on the cross. People who go through that will have no knowledge of the books at all. So when they hear you talk, they immediately they'll shut off on that basis alone. But then we have to contend with the whole child sex abuse scandal within the Catholic Church as well. So it's shameful, and people still carry that with them that, well, you know, if the Catholic Church was corrupt, well then Christianity is corrupt by extension. So people conflate the two. They'll, you know, conflate Christians with Christianity. Sorry, go on.
It's not going to be it's not going to be well accepted by any of your audience, I'd say. But when I talk about any Christian religion, minus maybe 2 or 3 people in the world, I don't know, maybe there's more. But when I talk about these churches, whether they're Protestant or Catholic or Baptist, or, you know, and I don't consider Baptist Protestant, so I don't group them in with the Protestants, the Lutherans and the others. But any of these groups, I call them Romans. They're Roman churches. And the reason or pulled things in or created new things out of things that didn't exist. And we go by a Roman calendar. Our holidays are all pagan holidays. You know, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. You know, there wasn't new lambs in the field on December 25th. That was a spring thing when he was born. But Sol and Viticus, their sun god, the Roman sun god, was celebrated on December 25th. And the same thing with wreaths and lights on the wreaths and the doors and the trees and the gifts and all that shit. That is all pagan. That is all Roman stuff. And so I don't say that all of these churches, I don't have any favorites. Like, I think they're all Roman churches. And then in my book, in Echoes of Power, I wrote about the Gnostic Gospels that were pulled out of the ground in 1946 near Cairo in a town called Nag Hammadi. And 30,000 scrolls were pulled out of the ground. And now we have the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas. All these Gospels that should have been included in the Council of Nicaea. 1,000 scrolls were pulled out of the ground, and now we have the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas. All these Gospels that should have been included in the Council of Nicaea, but the Catholics didn't want that knowledge in there. Like the Gospel of Thomas talks about a lot of secret or sacred sayings of Christ, you know, to obtain more spiritual enlightenment, things that invoke power, not just, you know, history, but like, you know, more connection with Christ. I mean, I'm a disciple of Christ. I'm not a Christian. I would never call myself a Christian, but saying anything like that in Ireland, that people's light switch turns off immediately. You don't want to talk like that in Ireland.
No, I don't think that's unique to Ireland. I think that's it's just not a topic that comes up for people, and I think for the average person these days, they don't want it. That's unique to Ireland. I think that's it's just not a topic that comes up for people, and I think for the average person these days, they don't want it or think that they don't need it. So we're still a Christian country per se. Our ethics are Christian, but it's what we call it. It's out of vogue. People don't have a need for it, and it's a very difficult conversation to have with anybody in Ireland. Most people in general, because it normally leads to trouble. You know, the minute you start talking about politics and sex and religion, eventually it leads to fucking trouble, you know. So it's always going to be a difficult conversation and a limited audience. So I think we just have to accept that. But I would like to have a school system where, you know, you could actually children could actually explore those books and religions critically, and examine them and learn about them. Because as much good as there is in them, there's also a lot of fucking trouble within them, and we have a large Muslim population to contend with that's, you know, ever increasing as well. And as much as we don't know about our own supposed religion, we know fuck all about Islam at all.
And you look at the Muslims, and they're well educated on Islam. They're not ignorant. You know, as far as their teachings are concerned, they start very young teaching the Quran and the, you know, all the 5 pillars of faith and all the stuff that they teach. You know, they're very, very educated at a very young age. By age 12, you know, they could run circles around a Christian scholar in Ireland or in the United States. These Muslim kids know well what they believe in. So I
have to disagree with as just as dumb as the average Irish person in respect to Catholicism. The average Muslim knows fuck all about the religion. You know, most Muslims don't live in the Arab world. Most Muslims don't speak Arabic, but they recite their prayers in Arabic. And they learn the prayers verbatim, but they don't even know what they fucking mean, man. They don't know. They do not know. They have a superficial understanding of their book. Yeah. And they're just obedient. And you can find the same in Ireland with Catholics. It's the obedience that is dangerous. And it's the same with Muslims. They're obedient. And if Muslims are true, if Muslims were true Muslims and they were true to the followings of Islam and Muhammad, you want to run a fucking mile from these people. If Christians were true Christians and they lived the life of Jesus, well, then we would be, I think, in a much better place. I've yet to meet anybody who fit from these people. If Christians were true Christians and they lived the life of Jesus, well, then we would be, I think, in a much better place. I've yet to meet anybody who fits that criteria. But I could take it to the bank that most Muslims will have a shallow understanding of their religion as well, just as much as Catholics do. But they are much more obedient and slavish than the average Catholic, especially a modern one.
My experience only, maybe this isn't true for everyone, but I've lived a lot of places and I've met a lot of people, and I discussed this topic with them, and I'm pretty educated on it. I could educate some Muslims about their faith that I've studied that enough. You know, I read the Bhagavad Gita 3 times. I know a lot about Hindu faiths, but when I talk to a Muslim, at least when I've worked with Muslims, I worked with a guy named Z. He had some Muslim name and I couldn't pronounce it, so I called him Z. But I really learned a lot from him, and just in my other experiences, just meeting people randomly, not even setting up a conversation or, you know, trying to find a scholar, but just bumping into people. You know, I'll bring this up because I'm testing people. I want to know what they know. I want to know their experience of the world. I want to see things through their eyes. That's the only reason I do this. I don't look for a fight. I'm not a confrontational, like I'm not a cruel person. I'm not looking for hurting people, but you know, these topics hurt sometimes, but I test people. I want to know more. I want to see their view of the world. And man, I've been impressed with 2 groups, and mostly Mormons. Mormons know fantastic amounts of information. They're well educated. They send their kids out into the world at age 19 for a 2-year mission. They learn a new language, they learn a new culture, and they learn all kinds of stuff about their religion because they're going out to people's houses and being tested by teaching. You know, they're called elders at age 19, and they learn all kinds of stuff about their religion because they're going out to people's houses and being tested by teaching. You know, they're called elders at age 19. You know, that blows my mind. It doesn't make any sense to me, but what they do is they get tested by the world, and they get tested on their faith, and they have to learn. They have to learn or be crushed by other people. And so the Mormons know a lot about their faith, and I'd say Islam, especially with their, presence in the world and what kind of damage they've created, attributed to them. Not all of them have created that damage, but the way they treat so-called infidels and some of the things that are pointed out in the Quran. But they get tested, they get pushed on about their faith, and they have to respond intelligently or be crushed and be looked upon as dumbasses. And so a lot of them can be dumbasses, like a lot of anybody can be dumbasses. But I've found just in bumping into people in the world randomly met in person, but if I met you on the street, I would be intrigued. I would sense some intelligence from you. I would sense a conversation that, hey, this person's worthy to talk to. I should open the door. I should find a way. And I would learn from you guys. And that's what I do with other people. If I sense intelligence, if I sense a story that they could tell, I want to open that door. I want to pry it open. Even if it's shut tightly, I'll pry it open. I've been really impressed with Muslims.
Yeah, I'm not. And I'll tell you why. So you'll get to the heart of a Muslim straight away if you ask them about Aisha, and ask them, maybe not directly because it puts people on the defensive, but ask the question. It's a very plain question. Do you think it's okay for a 50-year-old man to marry a 6-year-old child and then have sex with her at the age of 9? And that's, their faith is a big part of their identity. So their essential identity is being attacked when faced with that question. And I've yet, now I don't do it in person very often. One, because I don't know that many Muslim people in my day-to-day life. And two, if you ask the question, you're likely to get punched because people get very defensive when you ask them that question. But I've yet to meet one Muslim who will say, or interact with one Muslim who will say, yes, that's wrong, irrespective of the time period. Because you've got to remember, this is their standard, the standard human being for all time. This is the last prophet. And God, if you believe in such a thing, stood over this man at that time and said, yes, it is okay for a 54-year-old man to marry a 6-year-old child and have sex with her at the age of 9. And that's the standard bearer for your religion. Old child and have sex with her at the age of 9. And that's the standard bearer for your religion. And that's the starting point. And there's so much that's fucked up within that religion.
I find that the Mormons are also ignorant to that, willfully ignorant to that, because their prophet, their last real prophet or whatever, but I mean, they've had some sense, but the organizer of their religion took on 14-year-old girls when he was in his 40s and married them, and had many, just like Muhammad, had many wives, and many of them were under the age of 18. Some of them were at the age of 14. And so one, in fact, I think Fanny, what's her, Algar is her name, I believe. She was 12 when Joseph Smith took her. And so I don't have respect for either of those religions. And I think that their theology is whack. Like, it doesn't make sense. There's no pattern to follow that it lines up with anything else truthful in which they can justify this or justify that. And so I just find they're knowledgeable. They seem bright. A lot of like math came from a lot of our calculus and stuff came from a Muslim, some 600 years ago. And he created, math innovations that we use today. So they have a scholarly history. And maybe it's the dumbasses that we're meeting now in this world that are just being mass produced and then become refugees. And we bump into these idiots and they're not very brilliant. But you're right. Like if I asked a very intelligent Mormon, very bright historian, my step-grandfather was a professor of history at BYU, Brigham Young University, which is the Mormon school. And you ask him about these questions and he knows about it, but he'll shrug it off as, oh, you're anti-Mormon, which is the Mormon school. And you ask him about these questions and he knows about it, but he'll shrug it off as, oh, you're anti-Mormon, aren't you? Oh, you hate us, don't you? And they deflect and they, push you back by trying to create guilt and shame in you. rather than answer the question. But they know damn well what it is, and they know, the corruption in the church, but they won't admit to it. It's dogmatic. It's just following the leader for a lot of them. But they are brilliant.
Yeah, but that's what it boils down for me. Like, so, I know Muslims are more dedicated to their faith, let's say, than the average Irish Catholic, and they have their imams to fall back on, and there are certain stock answers to stock questions. But the difference for me is the more important thing for me is the truth. Like, so, like how a man couldn't say to me that's wrong, like, irrespective of where it's coming from, is the truth. Like, so, like how a man couldn't say to me that's wrong, like, irrespective of where it's coming from. Yes, it's part of your fate. It's, it was, I don't know how many fucking years was Muhammad, when did he die? The 600s or something like that. So 1400 years ago, yes, it was a different time. But this is your God and your prophet. Like, this is an awful fucking religion. And for somebody not to be able to bring themselves to say that that's wrong, even in this time, I've had conversations where they can't bring themselves to say that it's wrong in this time. So I'll ask the question, well, if Muhammad, came back tomorrow, and he said this was okay, because it hasn't been abrogated. It's not abrogated from the Quran, and it still goes on in certain Islamic countries as well. So it's still happening. But to not be able to bring yourself to say this is wrong, this is just simply wrong,
disgusting,
not committed to the truth. Like, and so for me, that's the central message of Christianity. Like, you'll never have the divine connection to the God. But here on earth, the light is brought about by the truth.
Yeah. Well, and you look at Joseph and Mary. Mary was 15 when she had Jesus, and a lot of people can't condemn that. That wouldn't be accepted in this society, but not a lot of people could accept, Mary being pregnant in this world today that we live in, but it's okay back then. They can justify it. It's all dogma. And I really have a difficult time with associating with any church. I've never joined a church ever. Like, I won't join a church, and I've never called myself like this religion or that religion. And I won't even say now I'm a Christian. I don't believe I am. I believe I'm a disciple. I'm a student of Christ, and I'm trying to find the truest form of him and his message. But I don't have any affinity for any religion at all. I insist on truth. And so my emotions, I embrace them. Because that's a form of truth. If I'm hiding my emotions, I'm lying to people. If I'm angry, people know I'm angry. If I'm sad, people know I'm sad. If I'm happy as fuck. I mean, everybody knows it. They can see it a mile away in me. And so my truth is sort of my virtue. All of that stuff, and I'm proud of it. Even if it makes me look like a pathetic pussy if I cry in public. Like, for me, I don't give a fuck, because I'm honest and you're not. Fuck you. And that's how I see it. But not a lot of people see it the same way. But if people were more in tune, if they wanted the truth. In fact, I wrote a book about this. I write a lot of books. I wrote a book called The Transparent Future, and it talks about an age in the very near future where lie detection is going to be 100% accurate and widely available commercially at your local department store for very inexpensive rates. You maybe install it on your phone. Maybe you have a little device commercially at your local department store for very inexpensive rates. You maybe install it on your phone. Maybe you have a little device, and it will measure the sincerity of people with 100% accuracy due to the rate of improvement of AI and the rate of improvement of technology in general. And nobody's going to be able to lie soon. It's not going to be possible to lie. And whether there's going to be dystopian side effects, that was the basis of my book, is there's dystopian side effects to that. If you want to get out of trouble, maybe you didn't really feel like the offense that you committed was so atrocious. Maybe they ban speech. Maybe we have a social credit system like China's imposing, and maybe you offended somebody, and so your social credit rating drops, and you want to lie about it, and you can't because of this technology. Like, I get there's pros and cons, but I kind of look forward to a future where nobody can lie. Nobody can lie. If they're being insincere, you'll see it. And so there'll be no motivation to lie anymore. Like birds in the sky. I don't get that. I don't get white lies. I hate that so badly. And it's all about keeping the peace. It's all about, just brushing things under the rug. And that makes life easier for the moment, even if there's consequences to it later, and the consequences of lying is more severe. But at the moment, the general alleviation of stress or contention or whatever conflict might come from it, if you tell the truth, then lying is more preferable, because that is an easier burden to bear at the time. And consequences aside, like at that moment, it's just easier to brush it under the rug and move on. I don't get that. I take all of my hits directly. I don't hide from nothing. I don't hide from emotions. I don't hide from truth. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that is really offensive to people in Ireland. I love it. I don't give a fuck whether they like me or not. But yeah, I find it hard to integrate because of that. And I love it. I don't give a fuck whether they like me or not. But yeah, I find it hard to integrate because of that.
Yeah, I suppose then you got to ask the question. Well, then is it fucking worth it? Like, I know for your own self, it has to be, because you have to be authentic. You have to live your authentic life. But it doesn't always work out well. At least for me, anyway. Well, I think there's a difference, isn't there, between brutal honesty. I suppose it depends how you frame this truth. Other people, because people will and do get offended by the truth and hurt by the truth, because it's not always pleasant.
Oh,
truth,
no, that's my problem. Is I don't frame it well. I'm not painting the picture well. Like I wish I could, and I'm going to therapy. So I told you I'm going. I'm signing up. I don't know if I told you, but I am therapy. I use betterhelp.com.
It's not an advertisement, by the way, just for listeners. I know a lot of podcasts advertise at betterhelp.com, but I'm aware of this. I'm aware of the site. Sorry for interrupting you.
Not for me. I'm not making any money off it. I know you guys are. It's a good service anyway, and because I can't find it through traditional means and local therapists, it's just so hard. There's a lineup of hundreds of people waiting in front of me. So I've just cut to the chase by paying an extra fee, and I'm going to betterhelp.com now for therapy. But I need to learn the tools, and this is part of my breakup lately with my girl in Ireland, is that I am so brutally honest, and it is brutal. It's not always pleasant. It's not always pretty. It's brutal, and it's messy, and it's terrible, and I can't stop. And so I need to find a way to encapsulate it better. I need to learn to paint a better picture. My artistry in telling the truth is like a sludge. It causes me nothing but isolation and grief. And, that's part of my mental problem right now, is that I'm isolated, and I've got conflict, and I'm estranged from the woman I love and the 5 kids that I adore in Ireland. And it's my fault. I get it. I definitely ruined it. So I'm going to get the tools to be able to rebuild myself up and be a better painter of pictures when it comes to being honest.
Yeah. It's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah. I think you would almost need to be psychic. You spoke about that lie detector test that might be, you'd be able to tell when someone's being genuine and honest. But I think for have a really beneficial, truthful conversation with somebody, especially someone you're in a relationship, you would almost need to be telepathically, with the best will and intention in the world. By the time the words leave your mouth and they arrive in another person's ear, something disastrous happens in the interim.
Yeah.
Because I think that level of communication, it's almost fucking impossible, especially with, just pure brutal truth, because people generally aren't used to it. And if you're anything like me, anger seems to quickly follow the truth, be it from the person you're expressing the truth to, or yourself. But it's an art, it's a skill.
Yeah, it is. I wish I was Jordan Peterson. He delivers it pretty well. And he's an emotional, creature as well as like me. He cries on a whim. If he feels the emotion, he allows it to flow, and he cries at a will, any will. And so I'm the same way. A whim, if he feels the emotion, he allows it to flow, and he cries at a will. any will. And so I'm the same way, but I wish I was as eloquent as he is at delivering the truth, and respected enough to know that I'm not out to hurt people. Like I'm not just a guy that's out like fucking Conor McGregor slapping people upside the head with the truth at a bar with, not drinking my proper 12, you motherfucker. Like I'm not that kind of guy looking for that kind of conflict. I just insist on the truth because this world is so shaded with lies, and it hurts. Like the lies are easy. If you're afraid of something and you don't want somebody to react, you're going to lie. Most cases, most people would lie to avoid that conflict. But, in the end, that conflict still exists. And when the lie comes out, you would lie to avoid that conflict. But, in the end, that conflict still exists. And when the lie comes out, the betrayal is obvious, and then the hurt sinks in deeper. So I just rip the bandage off. I'm not, the plaster, as you guys would call it. I rip that plaster off immediately and just let the truth reign and deal with the consequences immediately instead of waiting for someone to feel betrayed and hurt by me lying to them. And I don't know, it's so common in Ireland. Like you lie to your kids, you lie to your parents, you lie to your friends. White lies exist everywhere in Ireland. And gossip too. Gossip is crazy, but it's and that's where the truth comes out. You don't have that person you're gossiping about present. They're not in the conversation. So it's a lot easier to say, oh, well, Mary down the street slapped the shit out of her kids, and I can't believe she did that, and you'll say that without her being there. But you'd never say it to Mary's face. And it's people like to tell the truth there, but they don't like to have the consequences of the truth. And that's what kills me, is there's a fear, like a cowardice about that. And I don't like that. I don't like cowards. I don't like lies, and I don't like betrayal. And so for me, maybe I make myself a martyr. I don't even try to, but I feel like I'm exposing the truth and letting people know it's okay to be truthful. And I'm strong enough to handle the consequences. So are you. I'm not bad and tough. I'm not anything special. But if I can handle the truth, and I can handle delivering the truth, then you can too, whatever the consequences are. That's why I do it. I just try to make myself an example, I guess.
Yeah, I think for people around gossip, I think people know the dangers of being, brutally honest with each other, because it can and does lead to all-out fucking war, because part of the truth is being able to accept it, and that just go and approach the person and, say, X, Y, and Z to them. But I think when people gossip, it is awful to gossip as well. But I think people just take it that, well, this is the safest option, rather than approach the person and cause an almighty war to erupt, that they will just go amongst their own community and gossip with each other. And then that person is in effect shunned and removed from the community. And it's never easy being the bringer of truth. It never fucking has been, it's nobody welcomes it, because it's very rarely good news that you're breaking. Nobody celebrates the truth. It's normally when we're angry with somebody, or when we have an axe to grind with someone, that the truth comes freely. I've been at my most truthful when I'm fucking raging angry, because then it comes out, because it's like, well, fuck this. Truthful when I'm fucking raging angry, because then it comes out, because it's like, well, fuck this, I'm at war, like, so I'm not holding it back anymore. And here's the truth. The problem is the method of delivery is with a fucking, it's a nuclear warhead, So now I'm going to tell you all the horrible truth I've been harboring against you. And I think that's where the issue, where it causes a problem, where if it was from the beginning, if we had an understanding with people that, we would do our best to be truthful, because ultimately it solves a lot of fucking problems, and, reduces a lot of stress if we're truthful from the beginning. But that might just be a fucking pipe dream,
It's also a form of respect. Like if I respect my friend or my family member or whoever I'm speaking to, if I have any amount of respect for them and there's something that needs to be said, first of all, going to somebody else to say it without a lot of fucking problems, and, reduces a lot of stress if we're
truthful from the beginning. But that might just be a fucking pipe dream, you know.
It's also a form of respect. Like if I respect my friend or my family member or whoever I'm speaking to, if I have any amount of respect for them and there's something that needs to be said, you know, first of all, going to somebody else to say it without their presence, that's disrespectful. That's betrayal. But not telling them immediately, you know, I think is not helping them, and it's not helping, you know, the relationship, you know, especially if I'm going to go tell somebody else about it and betray them. But, you know, if I love and respect somebody, I would deliver the truth as a form of respect. And I just, you know, anybody who's in my life, and I have very few people, I can count them all on my two hands, the people that are in my life that are genuinely a part of it. This presence for.
No, I hear you. It's very valuable to have people around you who you can be fully truthful and honest with. Come what may. It's just that I think the real danger is when you try to communicate with somebody who isn't open to it, isn't used to it. That the reaction from them can only be anger. And I think we're quick to expose the truth about others. There's very rarely a time where people want to be honest about themselves and the harm we do to others.
Yeah, true.
But it is, but when that happens, it is fucking, it is healing, you know, to actually to get to the truth of an issue, to be vulnerable and honest. And you may make a fool of yourself, but for me, that's always the freeing moment. It's like when the two people come to the realization that, yes, well, what is the actual, we all know it's massively fucking complicated for two human beings to share an existence together and get on well with each other, because it let's face it, it doesn't happen. There is no, I don't see any fairy tale relationships around me where people are just, you know, massively happy all the time without strife and trouble and everything that goes with it. But I do think that truth is the key to it, and then to accept that when it doesn't work out, well then sometimes you just gotta let it go, you know.
True. And when you talk about that, being vulnerable to your own mishaps and your own ill will or, you know, mistakes, so I found Christ as a personal savior, teacher, whatever, when I was 19 years old, and I was a shitty person. I told you I sold, you know, sold cannabis, you know, to make ends meet, and I hung around with gangs. I was completely covered with tattoos. I got them all removed when I was 17. But I found Christ at 19 as a real powerful presence in my life. And at age 21, I released a autobiography, you know, basically because I had died to my old life and I had started a new life in Christ. And it was freeing. It was healing for me to talk about all the evil shit I did. And I was no saint. I was definitely a very selfish person. I still find that about myself. I'm very selfish sometimes, but you know, it is good that it's healing and it's productive to be able to admit that you're a fucking piece of shit person, you know, and that's the first step in healing and being a better person, is at least being able to admit when you're a piece of shit. And everybody has those moments. I had them in spades, you know. There's no doubt I had a lot of admit when you're a piece of shit. And everybody has those moments. I had them in spades, you know. There's no doubt I had a lot of shortcomings. And I probably should write a second book to talk about all the new ones, because I got a bunch. God, I'm awful. So I really am. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's pretty universal. You know, we can all be pieces of shit. It's just not to convince ourselves that that's who we are, that we're not pieces of shit. We just can be pieces of shit to each other. And we shouldn't really. There doesn't seem to be much of a need to be a lot of the time, but it is easy.
It is.
And it is. There is a rush involved in a good argument and drama, you know. But it should be easier. But in your circumstances, it's between the two families on two different continents. I don't know how you're gonna do it in continents. but I don't know how you're gonna do it, man. And that's not to make you depressed. I'm just trying to fucking think, because I've had the issues. I have a blended family, and all the fucking hardship that goes with that as well. But yeah, I don't know. Do you see an out, or is that this woman who you love deeply in Ireland is that the main focus? Is that still where you want to be? You want to make that relationship work, and then bring what you have in the States to Ireland? And is that the dream, is to have everybody in Ireland, or all the ones you love? Does it have to be in Ireland, or just to have them together, to have all that?
So my dream, my focus for 3 years has been that. And then I came over to do that, to make that happen. My older kids here in the States can travel alone. They don't need me to travel. Do that to make that happen. My older kids here in the States can travel alone. They don't need me to travel with them. They can do one of these lone travelers or underage traveler things, and they can come over and see me. But that was the plan, is to raise up the kids, the younger kids in Ireland, who are still very young, a lot of them, and all call me dad. You know, at least the littlest ones have all always called me dad. And so I do love her. Like, I've never loved another woman. That's where my heart is. But we are so different and so polarly opposite. And both of us struggle mentally in a lot of ways, and we both need therapy. And so, this, like the goal would definitely be to stay in Ireland, even though it's a disposition. It's a step down economically for me, and there's a lot of sacrifice I have to make over here. But being with her makes me happy, and being with those two that we had. I had wrote a letter. I had been thinking about it for 3 days. It wasn't very impulsive. I'd written it and rewritten it and rewritten it, because I wanted to set her free if she didn't want to marry me out of love, out of a real want to marry me. Like, I felt like she was doing it sort of as a commitment or arrangement, a way to keep me near my daughter, doing me a favor is how she describes it now. And I didn't want that. I just wanted true love. I didn't want her to resent me in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, being that maybe I pushed too hard for her to marry me so I could stay there. And so I wrote this big letter, and I was just like, we're just going to end it, period, in the story. You're released. Go on with your life. I'm sorry. Fuck off. To do her a favor. And I felt like that's what needed to happen. And I felt like, that saying is if you love them, set them free. If they love you back, they'll come back to stay. And I thought to myself, that saying is if you love them, set them free. If they love you back, they'll come back to stay. And I thought to myself, I'll just set her free. I'll let her go. Fuck off. And maybe she'll come back, and then it's real, and then she'll want to marry me. Maybe if I give her that freedom and disconnect in that way, that it will be real. It won't just be fake in any way. And if she doesn't come back, then maybe that's how it's supposed to be. And then I left. I left a week ago, and I've just cried and mourned and lamented the whole decision, because she was still willing to marry me, and she was still willing to keep me there until I wrote that letter. But it just would have been forced. It would have been, I felt like it would have been a manipulation. It wouldn't have been authentic. And I have to be authentic. Like, I have to. I can't live these. I have to be authentic. Like, I have to. I can't live these lies. I hate lies. And so I just let her go. And now she's way gone, because I was way tough on her. I was just a brutal asshole to her. And I just thought that's what I needed to do. I just felt really compelled, and maybe it was even impulsive, but I just felt like I needed to push her away to hope to God it would come back as an authentic love. And I know she loves me, but I don't think she loves me marriage-worthy love. And so if we're going to get married, it has to be that kind of love. It has to be the big agape kind of love. It can't just be this minor little, Eros love or whatever we had. I mean, it has to be authentic. And so I don't know. I don't know that I've lost hope yet, but she won't even talk to me now. She's totally blocked me on social media.
All right. Well, you're going to wait again.
That's it. I get it on social.
All right. Well,
That's
you
I can't
got a
even
waiting game.
That's it. She said she needs a week, I guess. She told my mother she just needs a week to think about things for me not to bug her anymore. And so, God willing, that's all I can do is pray. I do love Ireland. It's not about Ireland for me, though. Like, if I had a choice between here and Ireland, and that was my choice, I would choose here. But if it's being there with her and those kids and being here, not having, the luxuries of America, I would choose there because of her and those kids. And so it's a hard choice. It is like, it's not about the location for me. The location is not a great place compared to this place. Like it's definitely not economically feasible to live in Ireland, but it's a much better, happy place for me because of the people, and the culture. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, pretty much. I imagine she's not willing to live in the States, and that's not an option, is it?
Got 8 siblings, her mother, her father, her stepfather,
Yeah, she's grounded there. Okay.
and uncles. She's so grounded, and she has, a great life with, with her situation. She doesn't need me financially. Financially, she doesn't need me at all, like at all. She's totally doing well, and fair play to Ireland because, her circumstances would be much different here in the States. A person in her circumstances, in the States, would be living in a tent. I mean, it would be a different situation for somebody here.
Mm.
So she doesn't need me at all, but I have a lot to offer. I have a lot, to bring to the table, and change the direction of a lot of things in life because we are unsure of one another, and that I'm way too honest for. And so that's a incompatibility. Like I'm way too honest for everybody over there, and so that scares the shit out of her. That just terrifies her.
You said something there that caught my attention, that she doesn't need you. And I think that's a problem for most men. That there was a dependency between men and women, that the man would provide and the man would protect. But the state essentially takes care of that function. I would imagine for this woman you're talking about in particular, and other women as well, that the state will provide housing and shelter and security and income, guaranteed. And then for her to, or not just her, but for any woman to then take that risk, especially if the relationship has been on rocky grounds for a while anyway. Not just her, but for any woman to then take that risk, especially if the relationship has been on rocky grounds for a while anyway, or it's not going according to plan or smoothly. Well, then for her, it's got to be a massive gamble to go, okay, well, I will give up this security and take an essential gamble. I'm just using you as the example. I'm not really talking directly to you, but rather the circumstance that it would be a big risk for her to go, okay, well, let's do it. Let's get married. And then once you are married, you have, legal rights, not many, but you have legal rights for access to children and stuff like that. And you said how many children does she have? Is it 4 or 5 or
5? And one of them's my biological child. The other is
okay. Yeah, that's I'm sure you know already. That's another fucking minefield as well, especially if you have to deal with other fathers.
Oh yeah, that's what happened. Biological child. The other is
okay. Yeah, that's I'm sure you know already. That's another fucking minefield as well, especially if you have to deal with other fathers.
Oh yeah, that's what happened at the end. Is the other father got involved and started calling Gardy and Tusla and everything, immigration, and was just hostile that I was in that environment, and that really scared her off, and that's when we started falling apart big time. But like if I was in her position, like even if the other father, like if he wasn't causing us drama, but if I was in her position, I would be scared too. I would be scared shitless. Like I get her fear, and I keep trying to relieve it, and I bring up, well, look, I'm worth this much money, or I've got this much to offer. I'm this productive in the States. I know I'll be productive there. Or, I say these things, and then, it seems like I'm buying my love, from her or something. Like that's what I think she feels. She never said that, but she'll be like, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's not about the money. And so I feel guilty, like then she has nothing to worry about. But I think while I was there, the biggest conflict was that I had insecurity. I was not able to work legally. And like yesterday, I made a good amount of money, I can't really say what it was, but there's no way I would ever make that in Ireland. But I would twice the average salary there, easily, twice the average salary of what anybody in Ireland would make compared to what I hear. And I'm trained as a robotics engineer, but I'm into automation, networking, and computers and things like that. And so my rate here is very high. So, and I know everybody in Ireland needs those services too, whether you're at a grocery store, whether you're an office building, a lawyer, or a solicitor, or whatever, everybody needs the services that I offer. And even though there's a lot of competition here in the United States, very few people compete with me based on my history and, my United States. Very few people compete with me based on my history and, and so I try to do that, and that offends her. I think that I'm even bringing money into the equation. Like, it's not about money, she says. But in a lot of ways, it is. It is about money, because if she trades one thing for the other, that other thing has to be better, or why do it? So I keep trying to convince her that I'm good and I'm good for it. So I was stressed the fuck out. I was always like, we got to get this done. We got to hurry. We got to get this done. I'm pushing her buttons, and she's pushing back. And it created drama. I created drama, and she wants me to admit it all the time that I'm the one at fault. So I'm looking at it now. I'm at in this position. Certainly, my insecurities about not being able to function as a provider, drove us apart. It made big separation in our goals together. So I'm just suffering the consequences of being insecure. Certainly, my insecurities about not being able to function as a provider, drove us apart. It made big separation in our goals together. So I'm just suffering the consequences of being insecure.
Yeah, I think that it's difficult to have that conversation with a woman or your partner to acknowledge that is a big part of it. Like, so not being able to provide. Or the fear of not being able to provide, or even mentioning it, that you bring it up, that look, I can provide for you. If she won't acknowledge that is a real issue, then you're probably just doomed to an argument, because it is a precondition of a woman agreeing to marry you, that you have the ability to look after her and her children. But I think people still languished in that kind of fantasy that is. But I think there's a particular mindset which you have, is that you always want to be like 10 or 15 steps ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but for most people that can be oppressive. I can be pretty much like that as well. You've looked at an issue to the best of your ability, and you've looked at the pros and cons and the possible downfalls, and you want to talk about it. So you come to the table with almost a dossier of basically how you see the next 2 to 3 years going out, and it can become like a business meeting for people, and they're fucking swept off their feet. But what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I just want to be in love and be loved by somebody. That they've never actually thought about it seriously and broken it down into its utility, and that comes across a lot of the time as horribly cold. I've done that with women, had that conversation and made it like a fucking, almost like a transaction. And
she's lived with me, and my way of living and running a marriage is sort of like a corporation. Like, everybody's got their function, and there's bills, and there's strategies to pay those bills, and if we're going to have a good life, then these things need to be in order, and and everything like that. And so I treat relationships like that. It works pretty good for 18 years in my former marriage, and so I can only base it off of what I know. And then if I bring up, well, this is how it worked with me and my ex, then she's like, quit bringing up your ex. I'm not her. I keep doing things that I know women hate, and I know these things, and I should know better, and I'm such a cunt about it, and I keep going on and on. But she keeps reminding me that it's not about that. It's not about that. Stop it. Quit talking about your ex. Quit talking about your kids. This is you and me right now. And I got to just come to grips with that. That she has me right now. And I got to just come to grips with that. That she has different expectations, but there is also that critical need for financing and for future planning. And I don't know. I have a technical mind. I guess the only word I can use is cunt about it.
Well, I don't think it's contact. I think it's just part of being a man. You want to provide and you want to protect, and you have to talk about it. But it seems at some stage that if the other person doesn't want to talk about it or doesn't want to address it or worry about it, because it's fucking horribly worrying. We both know, like, you've children, I've children. It can all go horribly wrong in the blink of an eye. You lose your job. Then it becomes apparent how important the ability to provide actually was, because you don't have that nice lifestyle that you become accustomed to. But I think for some women, they don't want that level of stress, and they would be happy for you to deal with that, have that nice lifestyle that you become accustomed to. But I think for some women, they don't want that level of stress, and they will be happy for you to deal with that by yourself. That's your business. Okay, you want this level of lifestyle for us, great. But what they need to say is, look, just shut the fuck up about it. You manage it, handle it, and show me the fruits of it. And they would be genuinely happy with that, I think. And then
you're right.
When an Irish woman, you're essentially dealing with an agent of chaos as well. Like, so, maybe it's all women. It's not peculiar to Irish women, but I think they want that comfort. They want that level of being taken care of, but they just don't want to be made aware of it, because then it does seem transactional. It does seem like a business meeting or a team meeting you're having with the family. But it does need to be done. But maybe it just needs to be done, privately, or not to her knowledge. Just show the fuckers the fruits of your labor, but then it becomes almost impossible not to want to live with you and spend a life with you. And then if the love isn't there, well, then it will wither on the vine any fucking way. Let's face it. If the love isn't there, it's doomed anyway. But if we can take care of all that other stuff that is part of why the bitch will fall in love with you and stay in love with you, it may be wise just to take that upon yourself, and then let her not have to contend with that, unless it becomes an issue where you can no longer provide that by far. But ultimately, it would be much easier to find or to live with a woman who is of the same mindset, the same level of honesty and truthfulness, and is aligned with you. But I think that's rare, because when that does happen, well, then you lose that magic, you lose that chaos. And that's the exciting part of actually falling in love with a woman and losing yourself to the other person. And I think women want and crave that, and they don't want to get into the nitty gritty of, okay, well, let's look at it functionally. They just want the romance and the excitement,
Yeah, I've deprived her of that. It's true. And she's mentioned the things you've said. Those phrases you've said is definitely hit the nail on the head on a bunch of it. Yeah, I think women and men are different for reasons. Those are one of them. We're very technically minded, and we have to have a place for everything. And women just want the passion and the romance, and they're a very emotional creature, where we're very logical creatures, I guess. I don't know how logical I am. I'm a fucking nut job, but what I am, I'm crazy.
You're in good company. It's okay.
My definition of the word cunt is different than a lot of people's. It has nothing to do with genitalia or gender. It means, it's an acronym that means can't understand normal thinking. And if there's anybody is there anything else you guys want to talk about? I got about 5 more minutes.
No, I think that's good on that front. Yeah. So enjoy the cinema. Yeah.
What are you going to see?
What is it we're going to see, sweetheart?
The Boy and the Heron.
The Boy and the Herring? Oh, yeah, The Boy and the Heron. It's an anime.
Cool.
So, yeah. And she's been my bestest buddy. I don't have a bigger supporter than this little one. She is so sweet to me, and I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she puts up with my chaos, but she does. She says, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello.
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 Enjoy the cinema.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys. Cheers. Thanks for everything. Love you guys. Hope you guys do well in your show. I love that you guys are able to talk about these topics logically and with, good information, good advice, and just real deep thoughts. You guys are amazing.
Okay, you too, man, and take care. Don't be a stranger. This also, yeah, you're always welcome as well. So, yeah.
Thank you guys. All right, take care. Bye bye.
Okay, take care,
Bye-bye.
man. Take care. So.